The buildings, the bluffs, the spring, and the boulevard all make this a special place in Eureka Springs, which has kept the peaceful beauty of earlier times. The front has changed little since it was built in 1900 to house a very modern grocery and meat market. Stone to construct the building was blasted out of the bluff and cut on site. An early writer describes the store. The grocery was as clean, polished, and sanitary as any drugstore I ever saw. In those days, there was not a fresh meat counter in every grocery store. Homer kept his hams, bacon, and lard and bulky vegetables in a back room, which was a cave-like passage into the bluff, winding and widening until it furnished ample space for keeping butter and anything in his stock that required a low temperature. Caves are visible in the bluff south of the building. Congress Spring flows from one of these caves behind the building and under the floor into the shop inside. Before the library was built, there was an elegant gazebo marking the Spring Street entrance to the Crescent Hotel with a long stairway leading up. The stone gazebo stairway remains to create a grand entrance to the library. The Carnegie Public Library was completed in 1912, one of two remaining Arkansas libraries built with funds from Andrew J. Carnegie Foundation. The library still has its early charm and visitors are welcome inside. This view with the library in the middle shows a good example of the layering of buildings on the hillside in Eureka Springs. Rising above are St. Elizabeth's Catholic Church and the Crescent Hotel. This corner is still as charming as when it was improved in the 1880s. Originally called Crystal Spring, the spring gazebo was built in 1885 to replace a simpler one, which burned. Water from this spring was pumped up the mountain to the Crescent Hotel. Landscaping, benches, streetlights, and sidewalks were also installed to create a lovely promenade. The current-day Eureka Springs Preservation Society has restored historic street lamps to many of the springs. Past the gazebo, there is a walking path up to St. Elizabeth's Catholic Church and to the Crescent Hotel. Chautauqua House was a popular boarding house which stood on the east side of the street across from Crescent Spring. Below it in the hollow was the Little Crescent Hotel, lodging for African American visitors. This wide junction is where two of the three street railway lines intersected. From 1891 until 1899, public transportation was provided by mule-drawn streetcars, which were replaced by electric ones in 1899. They traveled a 3-mile track from the railroad department, which is on Hillside Avenue, to this spot. Here it intersected with the main line, which ran from Basin Spring to the Crescent Hotel and across the ridgetop, which we now call the Historic Loop. By 1922, the prevalence of automobiles crowded the streetcars and tracks were removed. Across the street, the First Presbyterian Church was built in 1886 of the same limestone as the Crescent Hotel. The congregation was organized in 1882, meeting in a big tent for the first year. After decades of absence, the fine, striped steeple was restored in 2008. Completing the streetscape of this popular intersection is the Crescent Cottage. It is the first of the fine homes winding down the boulevard. It was built in the 1880s as the home of Powell Clayton, the man who probably had the most influence in transforming Eureka Springs from a rough boom town into an elegant resort spa. Clayton was a general in the Civil War, Union side, and governor of Arkansas during Reconstruction. He was founder of the Eureka Improvement Company, a group of wealthy men of influence. This group brought in the railroad, built the Crescent Hotel, put in gas lines, electricity for homes, businesses, and streetcars, built a reservoir with water and sewer lines, settled property disputes, platted the town, and put in wooden sidewalks. When McKinley was elected president, he appointed Clayton as ambassador to Mexico, and the family moved away. Clayton, however, visited often until his death in 1914 and never lost his enthusiasm to make Eureka Springs a better place. This marks the beginning of the Boulevard, the residential part of Spring Street, with the fine homes of Eureka Springs' early professional class, sometimes known as Silk, stockings. Through the years, some of these homes have been lost to fire and newer ones built to fill in, making this an interesting walk through time.